stream is up. We did do audio checks, right? Yeah, okay. Good times.
I mean, I can see it moving over there, so... Audio...
That's here. Audio.
Audio's been audioed.
Audio's up. Checking on the Mars stuff right now. There is a live Mars stream. This guy's...
The guy with double mask here chatting. I don't actually know what he's talking about.
Alright.
I don't have the volume up currently.
We'll see what's going on. You're getting ready. We'll go live here in about 20 seconds. 20 seconds from Mars. Isn't that a group, right? Oh, crap.
30 seconds?
30 seconds of Mars?
Yeah, 30 seconds of Mars.
Or 20 seconds.
Right, YouTube?
How it is.
Roscoe is like out.
Guess what I didn't do? Alright, we got 5 seconds. I'm bringing up chat. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and
Bring it
howdy, everybody. Welcome. Today is welcome to Not Your Average Show. February 22nd. Lots going on, and as usual, we are 5 minutes late because why not?
The 22nd at 2 o'clock. Taking away 4 minutes.
Woo! Okay, take it away. 4 minutes. Hi, Corey. What's going on, bro?
Hey.
Hey.
What's up, dude?
He's there.
How's it going?
And Roscoe's obviously as excited as ever to be here today on the live stream. So today what we got for you is we have Jetoptera, which is something that I found over the weekend, which is a really interesting air taxi slash flying car, super flying car, which is pretty cool. We're going to be talking about that. Yeah. And then
cool, yeah.
also going to be talking about, obviously, if you've been watching the news, Denver 777 United, Pratt & Whitney 4000 engine, I think it was, had a catastrophic engine failure and takeoff. And so we'll talk about that from an airline pilot perspective. Corey's got some topics that he's working on you for over there, which is also what, Corey?
So we're keeping track of the Mars updates on Mars, the Perseverance rover on Mars. Actually, there's a
live stream right
a
now.
Live stream by NASA or JPL now, and we're gonna cover it here, so you don't have to leave, but we're cover here, and they're supposedly going to show us new images, but also some video, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
I think I put the link to the images raw. Oh, I didn't. I put it in the last video. There's a place on the NASA website I'll put up for you guys. It's a place where all the raw images will be stored. I'll link that down below as well. And I don't know. I guess they'll put the video there too. But But yeah. Anyway, so they've got like 148 thumbnails and images that I've already seen that have come in. We had 3 last time we saw them last week on Thursday or Friday. But today, yeah, they're saying today they have a video they're going to show us of the rover landing, which is
pretty cool.
From the rover. I'm not sure exactly if they're going to be all from the rover or maybe some from the crane, or yeah, we'll see. But there's some legit video. So
yeah, I'm literally he's watching it over there. I've got it up over here in the background. We can screen drop it at any time when something cool happens. So we'll be taking a look at that. And I think you also have some SpaceX news for us.
Oh my gosh, yes. So you guys will remember that a bit ago, serial number 8 did a test flight out of Boca Chica.
Kaboom.
And it was the first one. There was 2, but that was the first one that came back and exploded on landing.
Yes.
The FAA, as you know, we covered here as well. The NTSB and the FAA, the 2 organizations that would investigate such a thing, did investigate. And we just saw this morning that they have closed that investigation, and they appear to be satisfied with the findings. And Elon immediately tweets out something that basically says serial number 10, the next one that's already built in Boca Chica, ready to go, because that's what they do there, right?
Yeah,
it probably will fly this week because
I love it.
Because why?
Hey,
why not? Let's go. Let's do this.
As we'll discuss later, anytime the FAA closes any investigation like that, that's a win. That's an automatic move on.
Yeah,
you just go.
To be that quickly.
You don't think twice. You just go from there. Okay. So with that said, we're going to monitor the Mars stuff. I guess the first thing we can start talking about is Jetoptera.
Yeah, you want to do that?
Okay. Yeah, I can start with Jetoptera. Now, here's the thing. I was just doing what I normally do. Browsing the old YouTubes over the weekend.
The tubes.
And while I'm doing that, I come across this, which is this company, Jetoptera. And what catches my fancy about this is a different style of propulsion to move forward in the air taxi slash flying car markets. Now, this is kind of interesting in the developments of this little video that you're seeing play in the background. And basically, they're talking about what they call their fluidice, I guess, propulsion. All right, and what this
fluidic, yeah,
fluidic. Sorry,
yep. No,
I'm an idiot. It's okay.
fine.
And it's integrated with the airframe. And as you can see, what's going on basically in this screen representation. This is just running off of their website and their technology, and you can get an idea of the basic premise. We also have a link to the description below, to another video that actually explains how this technology works, which is something of not really mystery to those who understand fluid dynamics and aerodynamics, because basically what this thing does is it manipulates air in the same way that your Dyson fan would. And Corey went out and did a nice get on how a Dyson fan works. So basically, here's the deal. We all have the vision of the flying car, but every vision of flying cars I've ever seen either have a straight-on jet propulsion engine or some sort of ducted fan or nacelle type propulsion. And what this thing does is it does away with that by dealing with basically two different flight principles. And we can cut away to basically the video of this because I can show you a little bit more. These nacelles right here, basically when they tilt in their operation, what they're doing is they're vectoring thrust, and the cones or the surrounding shape are basically in the shape of an airfoil. And what that does is that passes air, just like a Dyson fan, inside this kind of strange collar effect that blows it over the surface on the interior of that little boxed out section. What that ends up doing is there's a little principle called Bernoulli's principle. And what happens in this particular case very, very quickly is it tends to create a super low pressure. And because this boxy design, or like a Dyson fan, similar representation, has this round or box shape, it creates low pressure all the way around it. And what ends up happening is when you create low pressure, high pressure air tries to fill the position of low pressure, which means it rams it right through. But there's two other things that are happening in this case. That is, basically when you get this air accelerating across the surface, somewhat like my mouse here, right? When you get air accelerating over the surface, what it tends on doing is, like a fluid, it tends to adhere to the surface, and as the surface curves, it accelerates. To put it bluntly, it just keeps getting quicker. And then what also ends up happening in this particular case is, as that air travels faster off the back of my mouse, as you're jamming more in here, this air that's actually entrailing, what it actually does is it sucks in more air and pulls it in 10 times faster. So basically, it's like this device that continually cycles more and more air, just keeps throwing more and more air through it. And to me, that is groundbreaking, because out of all the other air taxi things that we've talked about, and especially coming from the helicopter world and having flown helicopters and fixed wings, just like Corey, the difference is when you get into jet propulsion and you have that type of power, but you have less moving parts to make that happen, you are talking about what is basically it's no longer evolutionary. This is revolutionary technology. And here's the greatest part. Their prototypes are flying.
Yeah. So everything Mike went over is something that does seem, until you really look at what the technology is that they've tried to make this come to as a reality. It's interesting because it's not just somebody's concept that they are using some type of advanced physics or novel way to look at something. It's not just that. It's that this device or this model, because they have built a model, some scale models. They've already got them flying, and they're testing them. And the interesting part Mike was talking about, the way these nacelles or these ducted fans, in a way, they're not ducted fans like you would think of, like traditional ducted fans, where fan blade that turns and then it's within a shroud. It's not like that,
right?
But I'll just use the term. It's a fan. It's totally encased in a shape, as you saw. It's not even an oval. It's like its own little design.
Weird shape.
But the main thing there is there's a few other things going on there. There's air entrainment and air inducement, and then there's also the Shenandoah effect and some other things we could go into, but we don't need to. I guess my point I'm making there is that what they're doing with their type of propulsion, not something actually that's like actually new. Their application is new. And that's why we brought up this a bit. It was a bit strange to say. That's why we brought up the Dyson Floor Fan.
Yes.
You've seen the fan that Dyson makes. It's a floor fan. One of those oscillating fans you can get in your house to blow air around. It's nothing that seems too crazy. You'll see, maybe Mike will bring a picture of it, but there's when you look at the fan, you don't see any moving parts. There is an impeller, a compressor in the base that is bringing in air from the base, from the floor of the unit, and then compressing it and shooting it upwards into the ring, which he's going to bring up in just a minute. You guys will see what I mean.
Yep.
and when it brings that air up into that ring that's tall, then it shoots that from the rear of the ring forward, and then that air, through the Cannon-Doe effect, adheres to the side of the ring as it blows forward towards you.
Mm-hmm.
And since there's a opening in the middle, it's drawing in air from the back, which is in effect, in this case, now it's a high pressure, it's drawing that air in. And by doing that, they are able to run the fan at a lower speed. They don't need quite as much air pumping through it because of just the way the physics work. The air is, by the air moving the way it does through the blade of the fans, it's pulling in more air, entrainment and air inducement from different sides of the blade. And thus, some of these are getting up to 15 times more air movement or mass moving through it than is just coming out of the fan blades, the compressor part of the fan itself. That's huge benefit in efficiency, as it would be. So I guess where I'm going with this is Dyson's already done this.
Oh yeah,
the physics works.
They're not making air purifiers, which I didn't know. I clicked on the wrong one. It wasn't a fan; it was an air purifier.
Well, that's the same. The fan part is the same.
Yes, it's the same thing.
Yeah, if you want to. So I guess that's the interesting part. So when Mike showed me this, I was like, okay. On the face of it, I'm seeing like a part of a ducted fan, a Dyson fan, and a plane. Thinking, okay, and then I got to think about it. I was like, okay, this actually is all proven already.
Yes.
Not the application, but the physics behind it is proven. So
the style of technology.
I as they say, kind of waited with bated breath. I'm interested to see what happens with this, because if they can get some funding and really get some larger scale tests going on, because again, as Mike said, they're already flying. It's already half proven. So it's really just bringing it to market and making sure that there's all the kinks worked out, and
and here's some massive benefits, though. There's also some massive benefits, right? So if you're talking about on the very surface of it, if you're talking about a device that does what this says that it can do, right? And if you look at this design, if this basic design was to survive the way it sits right now, these nacelles in their operation, okay, and how this actually operates. First of all, there's one thing with helicopters. They're tremendously noisy and they're tremendously inefficient, because having to move that much air with a main rotor mass and the transmission and the heavy components to take the thrust from a turbine engine and convert it into a one up and a one out position, okay, two different transmissions, the weight of those are immense. Now, if you were to take this and simply just take ducted blown air from a ducted fan engine and just simply pipe it through these small openings. Now, your major jet airliners, they do this all the time with bleed air for anti-ice. Yeah. Okay, so this is not a hard technology to master, and the amount of moving parts is simply still just the turbine and these rotating nacelles. So you have less moving parts. You probably have more evenly dispersed thrust, which is very, very nice to know that if you're not having this massive rotor blade, you also don't have anti-torque issues to worry about. And on top of it, it's quieter.
It is quieter.
Okay. And even additionally, is you can put, as this thing seems to have in this large upper surface wing that looks like a Formula One car, you also have the ability to have a higher forward airspeed and actual lifting surfaces on the fuselage that actually cater towards generating more lift, which is very difficult to do in a helicopter.
Which is interesting too, because the animation shows that. See the forward engines?
They retreat
into the aircraft because they don't need them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Those canards on the front of the aircraft, as it begins to gain airspeed, then are generally have enough lifting force that they don't need the propulsors out front. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think it's legit in probably offering the first time that there's an advanced enough technology outside of just putting a huge jet engine, okay, out there on the outboards of these things for them, which would be tremendously difficult to do. Number one. Number two, it offers you the fact that you're piping the amount of thrust in between each individual nacelle. At some point, you can vector that thrust.
Of course, yeah, I imagine, yeah.
Which is vectored thrust technology has been done for decades on Harriers. Yeah. Which means you're really not changing the pattern there very much. And I think these guys have it. I think this is the first one that I've ever seen that I've legitimately been like, you know what? I want to fly it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. So a few things about it that pop out when I'm thinking application actually. Well, we're talking earlier before the stream started that the guys that developing this particular model were saying that it could be adapted for the electric eVTOL market, right?
Yeah.
With batteries. And then of course he put the caveat that it all depends on battery density, right? Power density.
Sure.
of course, like every other VTOL that's going to use batteries has a huge foot in the wondering of, you know, how much battery density can we get in, how much is it going to weigh, all that kind of those kind of things. And of course, sure, it can be electric, but it really goes back to also to know that there's still a compressor somewhere in this design that they have, or multiple compressors maybe. I mean, I wonder how they see that for simplicity, but anyway, but they still have to get and generate the torque to turn that compressor or multiple compressors through currently what I was looking at too. What today was a turboshaft engine that they're going to look at from my I can't remember which one it was, but it was a turboshaft engine, which makes total sense, of course, with the application. So they have those moving parts and all of the problems that would come along with again now a jet engine with a different application. I would say a safer application, right? As Mike mentioned as well, helicopters are certainly going to be noisier. The footprint of this design they have, even the one they plan to implement for actual air taxi use or whatever they do it for, is supposed to have a smaller footprint than a helicopter would. Obviously, helicopters, the footprint of a helicopter includes the quite big diameter that's 30 plus feet.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying this is going to be smaller than that. But also, there's no moving parts outside the aircraft.
And there's also one other major one.
You could load people with the main engine running.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not producing, obviously, any thrust, but you wouldn't have that danger of blades. If you know helicopter blades, as they rotate, they can move up and down as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we call that flapping. So there's thus danger of those blades impacting something on the ground when of course, you wouldn't want that to happen.
And one other major advantage, Corey, no more retreating blade stall.
Well,
So
yeah, no.
One of the massive things that helicopters can't do, they can't go very fast because eventually that rotor disc just doesn't like to go over about 140 knots in most ordinary designs. And with that said, with this the Jetoptera, this thing gets rid of that retreating blade stall, and it also gets rid of the vibrations. It gets rid of the symmetry of lift. It gets rid of a lot of the different things that we've always seen as drawbacks that you have to teach a helicopter pilot to expect. So this is I got money on this one. I really do. I really think that they've got an opportunity to make this work.
Cool. Having looked at mostly just the design so far and the physics behind how it seems to operate, I'm also pretty excited. Now, of course, comes the second part of, you know, how does their business look? What kind of backers do they have? How long have they really been at this? Like, what are they doing? That kind of stuff to really get into this. But on my part, yeah, I'm also just super interested as well.
And also, I think that this could be bolstered by, you know, if someone really designs a turbine engine for this application, that, you know, and they get to the point where they're not taking an off-the-shelf solution and they actually just stuff in a new one into this, they could have themselves even a better market.
Mike, what's the total guess off the top? But what would be like the shaft horsepower of like an APU that would fit in an aircraft like this?
Because an Embraer, we never had a shaft horsepower rating for the APU because the way that it only turns a generator. So it might be less than 200, even less than that 200 shaft horsepower. I would imagine if you're talking about direct air thrust here, though, if you wanted at least to get speeds, and we talked about this before, if this thing produced 500 shaft horsepower, and at the very least you produced 500 pounds of thrust, if you got 4 times that per corner, multiplied that, you're looking at this one engine being able to multiply by a factor of 10 by the design of what they're saying, and you could have this thing with 5,000 pounds of thrust on it. 5,000 pounds of thrust is easily enough to move a 50-foot commuter jet, or a private jet. You know, an Embraer 145 had 7,484 pounds of thrust each side. So go figure. 14,000 pounds of thrust, and you could possibly make anywhere from 2,500 pounds to 5,000 pounds of thrust on this thing. You would have a rocket. I mean, literally a rocket.
Yep. No, it's quite interesting. Something that we'll keep track of.
I want to fly.
Yeah, it looks like it could be
Wait,
cool.
Do they have a career for test pilot here? Because
the dogs.
I might have to actually,
Dogs
put in for test pilot on this one. So anyhow, hey guys, if you like what you have to say, remember, like, subscribe, follow. We're going to be covering more of the air taxi stuff because it seems to be this is the year for air taxi. We've covered the market research for it a couple of days ago. This is the year for air taxi. This is the year for these types of startups. They will be the next Teslas in the next couple of years.
Yep.
And it's interesting to talk about when a new technology like this, from a pilot perspective, it's exciting enough
cool,
to know
yeah,
that it could make it.
exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting.
There's proven principles that just have different applications. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of this technology is already out there. They're just doing different things with it. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
And those are usually the ones that spell success. The ones that usually find they're somewhere between what's already been achieved, modifying what's been achieved in a sense of what the military has already had in a practical application, going one step beyond, and those are the ones that generally achieve market success. So there's something to watch there.
Yep.
Interesting stuff.
I think it's cool.
All right, where are you taking us next, Corey?
We are getting some stuff from the Mars. I don't know if you want to just cut into that.
Let me see.
Or we want to go to it and kind of look at it after. I don't know, because you know we can go.
Are they blipping through it? Because right now I just see a guy with a mask.
No, there's video of it. It's pretty cool. I mean, that's actual video of the Martian surface.
Really? We might have to cut to it because I might have to find the spot for it where it's actually.
I don't know. There's no timestamp. I'm just trying to find it, but yeah, it's. We might maybe come back to this at the end of the channel because then we can skip around and find actual videos while people aren't talking. But
sure.
But it's. I've been, as we've been talking about Jetoptera, I've also been looking at this cool stuff.
Got it. Hey, so which one do you want to go to next? You want to go to the FAA and Mr. Musk?
That's the actual video of it landing with the dust.
Is that what's on there right now? Because I'm finding different.
Just a second ago, I'm looking at it. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. You know what? I found it. Here we go. That's the actual parachute.
That's the parachute video.
Hold on, here we are. So, Corey, what we're talking about right now is we're monitoring this live NASA feed that's coming through. That's actually giving us information on what it looked like to actually land the lunar. So you're going to go ahead and introduce it, Corey, because I'm not going to play the audio.
Of course, yeah. So this is the JPL. It's NASA TV, but they're doing a live webcast from some of the people that worked on the program. This is the guy that did the entry, descent, and landing part of the mission. But there's legit video.
Look at that. That's the separation.
New images. It's cool. You know, you see all the animations of it, and it's all really cool. But to get like actual video from Mars from last week, that's we keep skipping around and find some. There's one of the parachute coming out. I saw a moment ago. There's some video of from the bottom of the rover itself. When they're coming down and you see the ground getting closer, and then you see they kind of really slowing down.
Here it is. Here it is.
Yeah, watch this. This is cool.
This is actually the lunar land. The Martian lander. Holy crap!
Yeah, this is actually like video of from the bottom of the rover, and you'll see.
That's fascinating.
You'll see as they get closer. You'll see that because this almost kind of looks like it could be an animation to me. Like okay. Cool, right? But
CGI,
but okay, and then just wait till you get closer, and you're like, oh, this is real footage. Because you'll see the jets on the crane start firing to slow everything down, and you'll see the dust start flying around, and you're like, oh, this is.
Wow! Look at no joke.
See that? It's like, oh, this is not an animation.
That is the surface of Mars. That is fascinating.
So, if you're kind of new to the Mars thing,
we've been covering it.
Flying around. That's literally the surface of Mars is rusted. It's oxidized because, well, that's why it looks red. If you're wondering why Mars is red, but yeah, here's an image of it hanging.
The parachute
below the crane.
Wow. Oh no, that's below the crane, huh?
That's below the crane.
Oh, here we go. There's a video of that actually too, so I'm just kind of having to scroll through.
Yeah, I didn't check it all, but yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. What's that?
There's the video of it. I guess it's a partially frozen one, but this is just when it was dangling. Oh,
that's it lowering.
It's lowering the wheels. Holy crap! Excuse my French, but damn, that's.
So do we get the flyaway? That would be.
I don't know. Let's see. Nope. No flyaway. You can see the umbilical though.
Yeah, you can see that it gets more slack.
Yep. That's incredible. So this is live. We hate to do this to you in that respect where we don't get a full chance to really witness what is going on. There's the crane. So these are all live images that NASA is just releasing to the public. This started at 2:00 this afternoon. We were interested in watching it. We can't really cover the whole thing because we just want to see the interesting bits from it. and it's really cool. That's neat. So I guess we'll continue to monitor that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sweet. Shall we
move on? So you want to talk about Mr. Musk and the FAA? Or
sure,
we'll
do that, and then we'll hit up with the Boeing 777.
Sure, sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah. So again, just to kind of expand on what we mentioned earlier, as we introduced the the latest on Elon Musk and the FAA. So basically, this came out from The Verge, and it came out on yesterday. And again, just to confirm what we said earlier, it's the FAA has seemed to, well, they've closed it, so they seem to be satisfied with the investigation they conducted when serial number 8 Starship in Boca Chica, Texas, landed hard, really hard on the pad. So if you guys remember the Starship, it takes off and then it belly flops on the way down, and then it rights itself near the bottom, and then it lands upright on whatever they're trying to land it on. And this was the first one they did the belly flop maneuver to test. And when it came down, they already mentioned, we also talked about it a little bit too, but they had 3 engines when the regular ones are going to have 9. They had 3 of them on board, and they didn't all function quite the way they wanted them to. And of course, it landed hard and exploded.
Understood.
And the FAA didn't have the investigation. And to just touch on that, we still didn't actually know what they were investigating about it. We suspected there was some safety violations with maybe the range or the area around the landing area. We're not quite sure, because they didn't even mention what they actually were unhappy about. But anyway, they seem to have closed that investigation. And here's a quote from somebody who covers that. It says the FAA provided oversight on SN9, the mishap investigation, and then also with 8. Let's see, they seem to be clear the investigation, clearing the way for SN10 this week, hopefully. So Elon already commented, because of course he already commented and tweeted out that, quote, good chance of flying this week. And he's talking about serial number 10. So, it's what, Monday? And he's already like, yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this.
So,
I love it.
Yeah, okay, here it is. Exactly. Yeah, failed within the bounds of the safety analysis. So yeah,
yes.
something with the safety, with public or public property, which is why they were upset about SN8. So, when we get the report, we'll certainly be looking at this too, because I'm interested just to know, what are they actually looking at? What do they find?
Right.
With any company, you want to know what they found, if they had a chance to peek behind the curtain and see really what was going on, if there was anything going on that shouldn't be going on. So we'll keep checking that. But basically, what this is all telling for you guys and us is we're gonna be keeping track of SN10. I don't know when we're gonna keep track of that and see if SN10 flies this week, along with actually another SpaceX Starlink launch, which was supposed to be
yeah. Well, okay, so there's I guess there's other parts to report on that too, but hey, look, anytime we know this, beyond a reasonable doubt, anytime the FAA gets involved with anything that's part of an investigation, you can pretty much calculate on the fact that it could be long, laborious, and the details could be excessive, and that the workload upon you, the pilot, or anything else that happens in the investigative team could be immense.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a foregone conclusion, and rightfully so, because the FAA has a great responsibility to ensure the safety of passengers and the flying public. It has the safety aspects of keeping other private pilots and commercial pilots that are non-commercial, like non-for-hire applications, safe, and it also has people that are exploring the regions of everything sacred in aviation to the very, very limits, like Starship. And making sure
air taxis.
Like air taxis.
Like drones.
Like drones.
Like these are things that are in the news and happening and gonna happen. And
yes.
Honestly, whether, I don't want to get too crazy here, but whether you want government stepping into your business or not, at some point, if you're gonna fly equipment that, could fly over people's houses, or as we'll get into what happened to this 777.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to look into this and hopefully find a safe conclusion, right? A safe way to mitigate this problem happening.
And anytime,
regardless of what you think, that a sane person would agree. Okay, somebody needs to have oversight of this because they do.
Sure. And anytime you get a victory in the eyes of the FAA, it's time to walk away.
Oh yeah,
you just move on.
Yeah.
Because if you get yourself into the discussion of, it's almost like a courtroom. Anything that you say can and will be used against you. Okay.
Wow, that's so true. With the FAA,
it's legit. It's like that. Okay.
It is what it is, right?
So, and look, but again, they have a very specific purpose, and that purpose is to make sure that everyone's doing things properly. There have been operators that have done things below grade. Let's just face it. But in this particular case, for what's going on with Starship and how Elon is approaching it as a business model. They could also be ones that are stepping in at a point and saying, oh, well, this was dangerous. And you go, well, look, they're doing this in an isolated area in Boca Chica. They're not really taking massive risks in, the population being exposed. But if they want to blow up a rocket next to their own rocket, by all means, have at it.
Yeah.
Because they're really not, they're not damaging anything else but their ability to possibly launch another rocket, I guess.
Yeah. What we don't know is all the details,
Yes.
as Mike's kind of alluding to. I mean, there is a public road not far from the area, and, rocket exploded not far from a public road. I mean, there's a no-fly zone set up. I mean, there's obviously precautions that are taken, but that's kind of what we're saying. We just be interested to see what
it was,
what was going on,
what the outcome was,
and in some aspect to see what the FAA really said about it, because when we get the full report, I'm sure there's going to be recommendations in it, things that are required, but then also recommendations, and that's interesting to see what that could mean for future testing, but also operations. Because when I look at that and I say, okay, the FAA made they're going to release this report, they're going to have things that SpaceX has to do, but then they're going to have recommendations probably. You can take those and put them in your pocket and remind yourself, okay, if they're going to launch Starships offshore, if they're going to launch in Cape Canaveral, where we go watch the other Falcon rocket launches, you can guarantee this is going to come up again.
Yeah.
Like, oh, these recommendations, don't forget these, where to talk to you about this. So it's just it's interesting.
I guess it's worth mentioning. Look, if you ever want to achieve something like being a pilot, or create your own, or build your own aircraft, or work on something, I can guarantee you, from the day you start to get your private pilot's license, you're still looking at a period of probably 3 months before your FAA check ride and meeting the minimum requirements for what they lay out for you. On top of that, if you decide that you want to go the commercial route, even if you're very dedicated, even in the fixed wing world, it's a little bit shorter, but in the helicopter world, you're looking at a good 7 to 8 months. If you want to get it done with the amount of ground school that you need and so on, full time. Forget about if you want to go ATP, certified flight instructor, and so on and so forth, because dealing with these regulatory arms, they have many, many different hoops and levels in which you have to jump through, okay?
Yeah, they do.
Corey's been a chief pilot of an organization dealing with both the FAA and the EASA. He knows exactly what the red tape fallouts are in those organizations. They're strict, but they have their reasons for being strict.
That's the thing to keep in mind is, not always the easiest thing to come to work and have to deal with them. And I'm not, if anybody's watching, I get it. I'm just saying.
I just pigeonholed you.
It is what it is. And somebody's got to have the oversight, and that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
But it's just another, it's something that's necessary. And yeah, it's when 2 seconds about mine, and then I will move on. Since I had to deal with multiple organizations at once, that was kind of where some days were I was like, oh my. But honestly, the people that
you did it well.
No names, right? But the people I dealt with at both organizations really tried to help us out and tried to see that we were trying to do a professional organization operation, and so it's all good. It is what it is. It's all good. So, but it was. So.
Yeah, and I think so. I've had 9
but
different...
hey, Corey, talk about this.
Well, no, I guess I gaslighted that one for sure, because I pushed it right in front of him, because I didn't want it to go without mention that we have exclusive, one-on-one conversations with many people through those organizations. And thankfully, because I was only the training captain, I didn't have to deal with the FAA on the regular basis. So I just figured you do get to take a couple of bows after going a couple of rounds with the FAA. It is what it is. All right, it happens. This guy's done it. I've seen him do it. And he was the guy that I'd come back to in his office and be like, so how'd that feel?
I need a break. But it's okay.
Anyhow,
it's all good.
Thanks everybody for listening to that one. It's anecdotal to a degree, but it's true. So if you get a chance, remember, like, subscribe, follow, and we're going to talk about something else here that I'm trying to get this through and think about. Maybe I should just play the audio straight up, or if I should go into the position of introducing what ends up happening in a particular event like what took place with the United. Okay, so there's some notes here.
I just introduced.
We'll go through the parts that we know of, okay? Because it's, first of all, it bears noting, okay, that when you have an engine failure of any sort in a major airliner, there's a trained crew up front on this aircraft that knows exactly what they want to do. Okay, they know what the successful outcomes are going to be. They know what they're trained to do, and they spend hours upon hours upon hours, and I do stress this, many, many times, doing engine out operations to safely make sure that when an engine fails, that they are properly trained and prepared. And to go back into what Corey we were talking about this, and he's just made some notes, so I'm just going to read from this.
Oh, yeah.
On the 20th of February, 2021, United Boeing 777-200 registration, November 772 UA. Okay, actually, it would be
Uniform Alpha. But...
Uniform Alpha, right? Performing a flight was Uniform Alpha 328 from Denver, Colorado. I used to be based for United Express in Denver to Honolulu. So with 231 passengers on board, 10 crew. There is their initial climb out of runway Denver on 25. Now, 25 runway out of Denver is going directly towards the mountains, almost due west.
Yep.
And what they had is basically they had a Pratt & Whitney 4077 engine that had a complete and total engine failure, which ended up having the entire engine nacelle separate from the aircraft. Now, this happened at 13,000 feet. Denver, as we all know, about 5,636 feet, as the runways are actually at that altitude, which is why they call it the Mile City. So the crew requested a return to Denver. Denver was happy to oblige, and they offered them multiple runways, and they ended up coming back in on runway 26. But now the difference is they came back in 23 minutes later. Now, at 13,000 feet, obviously, if you do the math, at about a 1,500 foot per minute rate of climb to about 2,000 foot per minute rate of climb, these guys were roughly, at the time when this accident happened, they were roughly 4.5 minutes out on their climb out. Okay? So why would it be another 20 minutes before they come and land? And this is one of the things we're going to talk about really quick, okay? They were advised also before they made the return back to the field that there was going to be some sort of level of asking for crash, fire, and safety, and that there would be people standing by. There was no injuries.
The standard procedure.
Standard procedure, right? And the unfortunate part is, though, that they littered the ground with the engine nacelle and shroud from the 777. Okay, now the good thing is the 777 fleet has been grounded for inspection, especially the ones that have the Pratt & Whitney 4077 engines, which is great, and there's only 2 operators, I believe, one in Singapore, and United is the other one that has the 777s that actually have those engines. So this is the first thing that they're actually talking about.
Oh, really, James? That's quite interesting.
What's that?
James in chat says the pieces landed only a mile or 2 from his...
Oh, I've actually got friends of mine that other pilots used to fly with that are actually got pictures on Facebook of it literally being in the field across the street from their apartments, and there's pieces of that, so on and so forth. So there's a couple of things that we could go through here, and so one of the first things I kind of want to bring up, okay, is this is from another group here, which is called VAS Aviation, and this is part of their conversation of what took place and how this actually went down. Okay, and we're just going to play a little bit of this because it's interesting to hear the conversations of the actual crew, and you can see a visual representation.
Departure, United 328 Heavy, Mahalo. Number departure, United 328 Heavy is with you out of 6 for flight level 230.
United 328 Heavy, number departure, radar contact, climb and
as we're doing this now, I'll just talk for just 2 seconds and say, so this is off live ATC, and that's a website you can listen to recorded messages from tower and aircraft. It's required by regulation to be stored for so long after it's flown for things like this.
Yep.
So this is an animation that the guys at VAS Aviation webpage really do some good.
Yeah, we have the link below in the description.
Yeah, check that out. But this is actual, like, this is not a remake, is what I was kind of getting at.
Yeah.
This is actually the actual conversation between ATC, the air traffic controllers, departure control, but also the people in the tower, and then the pilots in the plane.
Yep. So generally, when you're coming off runway 25, they start their way in the departure.
United 328 Heavy, clear direct Zimmer.
All right, direct to Zimmer, United 328 Heavy.
All right, so what you're going to notice there is that what happens is the pilot, you can hear his voice kind of fluctuate, and he goes, "Oh, Zimmer." And the reason why is because on this particular departure, which is what we call a standard instrument departure, or SID, Zimmer is a fix on this, and when you get that, it's the last fix on this one, so they're getting basically direct routing to miss all these other traffic routing points. So he's like, "Oh, Zimmer." There's almost like a hint of excitement, and it seems like climb out's just going as expected.
Denver departure unit did 328 Heavy, we experienced a failure, need a turn.
All right, so here we go. So when we're basically diagnosing something like this, right, you can actually hear on the call that they're actually making to ATCs, you can hear the fire alarm going off behind the background.
Yeah, the fire bells, yeah.
The fire bells are going off, which means there's an immediate response that's going on by the crew, okay? And as they're going through their diagnosis, he immediately knows that there's an engine failure because on the CAS system, the screen that's usually in between the two pilots, there's an annunciator panel, and that panel usually illuminates little bars that say, hey, engine fire, engine flame, engine this. They can glance down, and they have to start going through a troubleshooting procedure. And that's exactly where the pilots were in this particular event. And
So if you haven't seen it, it's at timestamp 210 in this video. I don't know if you'll get there anyway, but there is images of a passenger sitting in one of the windows.
Mayday, Mayday, United 28, United 328 Heavy, Mayday, Mayday aircraft.
and a very competent Mayday call. They're calm, they're cool.
Yeah, United Denver departure, United 328 Heavy, Mayday aircraft. Just experienced engine failure, need a turn immediately.
328 Heavy, left or right turn?
Left turn.
328 Heavy, turn left heading 080.
Left heading 080, United 328 Heavy.
All right, so in this particular case, whether they're looking at obstructions or so on and so forth, and maybe they judged how much of the engine was actually lost, it's not producing any thrust, they ask him for what direction of a turn because they want to make it easier for them. At this particular point, the minute that that Mayday call went out, ATC is clearing space both left and right of these targets. They don't give a crap at this point. As soon as that Mayday went out, these guys were given carte blanche to go wherever they basically needed, especially in an engine out scenario. So that's one of the things that you'll hear them talk about from this point forward, because all exceptions will be made to land this aircraft. Now, what comes next is very, very interesting, and you might be shocked, but people shouldn't be when they hear what's about to happen next.
Pilot discretion, maintain 9,000.
Okay, descend and maintain 9,000, United 328 Heavy.
320 Heavy, you want us straight into runway 7?
At immediate, we need to let's go. We need to run some checklists.
All right, so that's where we're going to stop that for a minute, okay? And this is where the conversation comes in as pilots.
Yep.
Right? You might be shocked as to hear that they were given a runway 7, and these guys didn't jump all over that opportunity, because there's a reason. And the reason is because in order to successfully handle an engine out situation, we have a comparative event here where the aircraft is obviously not doing what's expected. When you're in the simulators, and I can tell you this, it's intense. You go through many, many training situations like this to go through very clear and concise conversation between you and another pilot on board. You're both trained to the same standard, because I don't know if that pilot's flown with this guy 6 times or if this guy's flown for the first time on this trip, but they both knew exactly what was going to happen. And the minute that that engine went out, the very first thing they did was secure the very immediate checklist items that they could. But there's a thing called a QRH, which is called a quick reference handbook, that sits usually in the center console between the two pilots, that actually whoever's the flying pilot, he simply monitors the gauges and actively aviates. Okay. Navigation and communication happens as a joint effort between both the first officer and the captain. And whoever's the pilot monitoring will grab the QRH and seemingly start to go through what would, I guess at that point you would think that they're almost so calm it sounds rehearsed, but it's so rehearsed at this point that they literally don't want to land immediately, because they can take actions that can mitigate and make this landing so much easier for themselves. And Corey can elaborate on some of that.
Yeah, sure. So first off, I'm with an emergency in an aircraft. If you guys are not pilots, or if you are pilots, one thing you'll hear your instructor probably say many times and read about is something called aviate, navigate, communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And those are steps that you want to take or must take in order to handle in-flight, not just in emergencies, but anything you really do in flight. And so we can apply it to this case as well. So aviate, navigate, communicate. So first thing that you may not know is when they were dealing with the initial instrument indications they probably did a few things first, and then just took a quick bearing where they were and then made the call. Probably. I mean, it doesn't take long. I'm not saying that minutes. It probably was pretty quick. But still, there was somebody who, again, Mike said pilot flying. Whoever the pilot was flying, they continued flying the aircraft. The other guy, they probably saw some indications. They probably said, I see this. They confirmed that's what we see together, and then they probably said them.
So they call those memory items.
I was just literally the exact thing I was going to say next. Was there's some things that pilots were trained to do
immediately
because of the necessity of time that you have available to do. And some of them are called memory items. So when you would take out a checklist, everything you would need to do for any emergency is going to be encompassed in the checklist. But you'll see a lot of times, it depends how it's written, but there's going to be a section or some things that are just called memory items.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things you do not have time to pull the checklist out and look at and then do. You literally say, okay, Captain, fire on engine 2 or whatever, and you confirm however you confirm, and then you just do the memory item.
And,
no matter where the checklist is, you just do those things.
And basically, when there's an engine fired, the number one thing would be number one thrust lever identified.
Probably auto thrust down, throttle lever down.
Yep.
Fuel cut off.
Actually,
if
don't
fire
even
indications. Then they probably turn the little knob to extinguish fire. And
Right.
number two. I mean, yeah, but those are checklists like done.
So this is how it basically goes. So if I was pilot flying, I would turn around and I would say number one thrust lever identified, and the first officer would say, okay, he'd literally put his finger over and say number one thrust lever identified.
I would look over. I'd
okay,
do that.
number one thrust lever idle, and you would literally both watch as it went to idle, and you would confirm. So you did not shut off the operational engine because that has happened. Which has happened. Okay. Then someone would the pilot that was non-flying would see number one number one or number two in this case, number two engine lever or fire extinguishing lever handle pull. Okay, and then they would go up, number two handle identified. The next pilot would look at it, go verified, pull. Then the conversation at this point would be, do you rotate? Okay, because if there's any significant damage, separation, or fire, then it's a rotation, because when you rotate that handle, it fires fire extinguishing bottles into and around the engine nacelle. And what basically does is that starts the fire extinguishing process. Then there's two bottles. You can shoot the A bottle or the B bottle. Okay, and that's the rotate left or right on the handle. So right then and there, that's what these guys did within the first minute and a half. And the reason why they're saying at this point they have to run checklists is because they have to what they call secure the engine, which means they just got to make sure that they're going to be able to land with one engine, going to put the aircraft in a trimmable configuration, run obviously what's going to be their numbers at this point, because like Corey can iterate here.
Yeah, so I brought up as well, I mean, other things they have to do that may not be apparent to just passengers is if you're on board that aircraft and you just took off from Denver and you're going to Hawaii, you've got a lot of fuel on board.
Oh, yeah.
And for aircraft, again, that's something else you may not know, there are maximum weight limits. There are weight limits ramp, their weight limits for pushing, how much fuel you can actually put on the aircraft, taxi limits, takeoff limits for fuel. You can actually taxi in an aircraft heavier than you're allowed to take off because you're going to use some fuel on the way to the runway. There's all these limits, which is for safety. They're tested limits.
Max takeoff
There's
weight.
Also landing limits for weight limits. Weight on wheels and things. So part of what Michael goes as well is after they secure the engine, so they've aviated and navigated. Now they've communicated what they need. Now they're actually navigating back towards the runway. Now you'll see, I think we haven't got there in the video yet, but they're going to ask for more time to run checklists. Actually, they're going to ask for time for more checklists. And even the ATC guy calls them a few times, actually, and keeps offering them runways. And you'll see, I think 2 or 3 times they just say, we'll keep coming back around.
Yeah.
And they need a bit more time because they're literally, they got to run a few more checklists and then make sure the aircraft is in a configuration they can safely landed now. And then it's controllable as well. And then, of course, too long, but it's still something they have to go through with it.
Yeah, so there's
Michael get there. So
there's more work to be done. So the checklists are, they've successfully completed their checklists. They have done their memorandums. They have done their items that are now related to the QRH, and now they're going to go into basically cleaning up and making sure they can actually achieve this approach. So we're going to listen a little bit more here for a second. Here's the video.
There's the video. So that's literally what number 2, which is the engine on the right. Only 2 engines on this aircraft. That's the engine over the right wing, and you can see it's less than new. It's it might be. It's in pieces. There's a cowling that goes around it. That's gone.
Fuel and souls on board and intentions.
Yep. So now they're giving them the final information on souls.
Since they declared an emergency, ATC asks how much fuel you have on board, and then has
Do you want to left turn into the airport right now, or do you want delay vectors for anything else you might need?
We'll need delay vectors. We need to still run a few checklists and get some landing data.
There you go. Okay, so that's the next part. So they want to run checklists and do some landing data. So they're asking for delay vectors. What that basically means is that ATC now is going to give them a left and a right turn at some point to give them some time. And when he talks about now we got to run some more checklists and we've got to get some landing data. So here's what happens. Like Corey alluded to, these landing weights. Well, guess what? No one's sitting there with a calculator in their hand going, oh, let me do landing weights here. Let me do landing weights there. No. There's what's called in the middle of the aircraft. There's 2 interfaces called the flight management system. Okay, and these things are just basically boxes that you could go in and touch and make any adjustable data entries to the actual aircraft. So basically, giving the aircraft information on what it actually sees and does.
Yep.
And in doing such, when you look at an FMS, this FMS is quite elaborate. Okay, and it ties into also your approach, and it ties into your navigation, and it also will tell you the distance that you need to successfully land an aircraft. Okay, so, and what that aircraft FMS will do is it'll also give them localizer information. So it'll basically help them maneuver the aircraft onto the final approach. All right, so what I'm going to just bring up here for a second is just something else I want to show you because. Yeah, so in the issues of if you're looking at a flight deck and what this basically means in the annals of an FMS, okay, well that's great. This is basically what it comes down to, right? So an FMS is this little box right over here. All right, so this box right here, that's an FMS, and that's an FMS. Okay, so when they're going through their diagnosis, he's going to go ahead and he's going to compute how much weight they have in fuel on board. He's going to turn around and enter that in. He's going to see the available runways that ATC was able to give them, and then he's going to turn around and make an assessment and say, we can use this runway because we're coming in overweight. Okay, we have to worry about our braking distance, we have to worry about the runway condition, and we have to look at the wind. That's going to set their approach speed. Now, their approach speed for single engine out operations could be different than dual engine operations. And they also have to consider that this little wheel back here, which is the trim wheel, okay, is going to be configured for one engine not producing thrust. So they're literally going to go through that process. And Corey can elaborate a little bit more about what's going to go on in their thought process at that level.
Yeah, sure. So after now they've already talked to ATC and they've said we're getting vectors. So as Mike said, whoever is most of the time they're plugging all that data in. As Mike alluded to, the FMS brings all the data from the outside, from air temperature to the runway conditions, lengths, and all that stuff, pressure, altitude, all those things. And it gives you some solutions on, what runway you're going to land on, how long it's going to take for you to brake with one engine out, with whatever speed you approach the runway at, whether the runway is dry, wet, all that stuff. And then they're probably, at some point, I think they're probably communicating to the cabin crew. I don't know when that occurred, but that was certainly after they communicated to ATC. They've secured the engine. They have the aircraft under control now. It's not out of control, and they have a plan. Then said something probably to back again. Like I said,
when they talk to the cabin crew, I can tell you
not like right away, but at some point.
Well, they'll tell the cabin crew what they'll do is you'll buzz the head flight attendant, and when you buzz her in, you'll say, or him or her, you say, hey, by the way,
number 2's out.
Yeah, number 2's out. But you don't say anything to panic them. What you basically deliver them is, hey, we're going to turn back. Okay, so we're no longer continuing, so they know that. They give you an amount of time. We're going to be on the ground in roughly 12 minutes because this way they have the opportunity to secure the entire cabin for a different type of approach and landing.
They're doing back there.
They're going to tell them what's expected when they get on the runway, which means when we touch down, there will be crash, fire, and safety rolling, so that no one is startled when they look out the window and they see fire engines paralleling the taxiways along. And he's also going to tell them if they plan an emergency evacuation or not and where they intend to do it. So they're going to say, hey, by the way, we're going to do a full stop landing on the runway, and we're actually going to evacuate the entire plane there, or we're going to attempt to put the fire out and get back to the gate. All right, so that's the conversation that they're going to have right there.
Communicating that.
Yep. All right.
And then one thing while we're just continuing just wanted to bring a little bit of the human factor in there, right? So in the beginning when stuff happened, a little bit of nervousness in the voice because, startled out of the ordinary. Things are not going as they would normally in normal flight. But you'll see as we get a bit further in and we start circling back to the runway, listen to the way the pilot sounded.
328 Heavy, 1 able fighting 050.
050,
this guy. He's fine. It's normal. Flight is normal.
What runway you're planning for? 328 Heavy.
Yeah, 328 Heavy, you can have any runway you like, so just let me know.
Any runway you like. Free runways.
If you want to go into the west runways, or I can take you up to the north and take you to the south runways, it's really your call.
Now there's
runway 5 to runway 26.
And right now,
information Quebec is current,
all right, one last piece of information. So right there, they just offered them, because these pilots probably did not have an opportunity to listen to the ATIS to get the proper information to come back into the airport. And it's been an elapsed time of 23 minutes. The winds and conditions may have changed. So they give them that for free. But like Corey said, now look, yes, they're very calm, but I guarantee you one of those pilots is going through an actual moment where he's going, "Oh shit, this actually really happened.
Of
We
course,
actually
of
really had the
course.
engine failure."
Of course.
Look, their sim training is fantastic. That's why this is almost a non-event. And let me tell you something. This is literally in the annals of any pilots in their abilities to handle this situation. They have been trained so heavily at this. This is pretty much a non-event. And that's why you hear it first. There was a little bit of fluster, just like Corey said. But just to reiterate, this is almost a non-event. And we'll just play this out to conclusion now.
639, 328 heavy.
We can take a tighter turn in here.
United 328 heavy, about 8 miles from grass, turn left heading 290, making after about 7,000, go establish on the localizer, clear ILS approach, how much you could.
I cleared your ILS 26, United 328 heavy.
Runway 26.
United 328 heavy, Denver Tower, wind 3609er, runway 26, clear to land, Denver altimeter 296.
Clear down 26, United 328 heavy.
And this
United
is
328 heavy, equipment is standing by your discrete
standard operating
frequency when you
procedure.
land and roll out.
He's giving him a
Talk
discrete
to the
frequency.
Personnel on the ground is 120.15.
All right, 2015 for United 328.
United 320 heavy, plan a full stop on the runway, and then the personnel will come in and check out your aircraft, and then we'll get you moving from there.
Okay, full stop on the runway, United 328 heavy.
all right. There you go.
Comes in, lands.
And that's it. So here's the things. Basically, first of all, another shout out to the VAS Aviation guys on your website and the YouTube video that you guys produced, because that enabled us to make a great stride in giving you some of the insights into what's going on in the pilot's mind when there's actually an engine failure on board an aircraft with commercial paying passengers.
So yeah, shout out to them real quick from me too, because they're obviously super quick. I mean, this happened on the 20th, and this video happened on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some work going on. Somebody over there. So thanks for that, because it makes us a lot easier to talk through this. So
To talk through it.
thanks so much.
And so as a result of that, also just remember the United 777s are grounded, and they're preparing for an airworthiness directive from the FAA, which is going to stand in and basically say, hey, look, we found something with these hollow blades that are
What
basically.
did they find? We haven't told anybody what they found.
We don't know what happened yet, but we're probably going to hear more about this in the not too distant future, because unfortunately, as any event goes, there's great information that comes from the post-diagnosis of what happened, and we'll wait to find out exactly how this all went about. But again, to the crew and to United and to everyone that was involved, you guys did a great job.
Yeah.
Can't say much more than that.
Just that before we close that out too, just what we know so far, what happened. It appears that the fan blades. So if you look at the front of a jet engine on a passenger plane, as a big bypass turbine, and you see those they're like fan blades, like your fan on your ceiling, but there's a whole lot more of them, a lot more closer together. It appears as though, what was it? It was two, right, Mike?
I think it was actually. Wait, I'll show you here. Hold on.
Two pieces. I think it says in there, detached.
Right.
And this thing is spinning
Right
quickly,
here.
as you know, when you've been on a passenger plane, you look outside, you can see it spinning quite quickly. They actually designed these so that the cowling around them can contain a blade failure.
Yes.
But not always, right? And so what it appears is that certainly you can see a piece of one missing.
Oh, there's two. No, there is two.
But that's what I was going to say.
Now I
it
see.
appears
Yeah,
there's two of them that had this issue. One of them was contained, the other was.
Yeah.
And thus you have the engine coming apart mid-flight, and that's why it obviously destroyed itself, flying everywhere. But you can imagine one of the things that they're trying to do when they have an uncontained engine like this with turbine with the blades, to keep the blades from flying off and hitting the cabin. Right?
Yes.
It's one of the huge engine goes boom and goes bye-bye. Okay, not good. But let's keep the cabin integrity intact.
Right.
And that was the case. As far as we're aware, nothing happened in the cabin. So,
which is good.
Yep.
Fantastic. And and the opportunity there is that, look, everybody wants to second guess. Everybody wants to be part of the equation in certain things like this. And if you're part of an actual flight crew, this is what you prepare for. This is what people do. It's almost considered a non-event. If I had $1 for every engine out that I did in a flight simulator, I'd be a wealthy man, because you do a lot of them. And congratulations to the crew. I'm sure we'll be hearing more, hopefully from on their names, because they did such a great job. And again, outside of this being just a normal everyday operation, just like Sullenberger pulled off in the Hudson,
Yep.
okay, it's not necessarily a miracle. It's just really well done work. Yeah.
Position, planning ahead.
All that stuff.
So we did, as Mike said, we did a lot of that in our flying so far.
Oh, but there's a difference. You know what we forgot to mention?
Helicopter difference.
Okay, so here's the difference. I'm going to open up a slightly different discussion. We're going to go a little longer today because there is a difference between...
We haven't seen any Mars stuff, too.
Yeah, that's sorry. Yeah, Mars is still in the background. I forgot. So there's a difference, and I'm going to lead this off with there's a difference between helicopter training and fixed wing training when it comes to jet aircraft, because jet aircraft are designed to fly on one engine and to do it almost methodically, without really
by
much
design.
Yeah, by design. But single engine helicopter operations, especially in the piston and the turbine class, once you have an emergency that affects either the power plant or the transmission, it's a very different mindset about what actually has to happen in terms of, and I'm going to kick this off to Corey, in memory items, because the memory items are more like memory action items.
Yeah, so just to expand on what he's talking about. So what the video we just saw, they had an engine failure number 2. They have another engine still working. They literally flew for 23 minutes before coming back to the airport.
Yep.
I know it's a multi-engine aircraft, fair, but it's just if there's anybody out there that flies helicopters, we'll talk. You guys will know what we're talking about too. But just to say, we've done some flying as well, and any single engine aircraft, then we're going to kick it specifically to helicopters.
Right.
If you lose an engine, we're not talking about the blades. We're not going to go into that conversation. If we just lose the engine, the power plant, the device providing torque, turn the main rotor and any accessory gearboxes, transmissions, any of that stuff for the tail rotor, all that. If you lose the power plant, there's no force generating that torque to keep turning.
Mm-hmm.
And because aerodynamically speaking, without going into that as well, since the blades are making lift and they're going through the air, they're also making lift but also drag. So because that's the case, and there's more driving force in the blade, going to slow down in its rotation, and that's bad.
Bad things.
That's bad. In a helicopter, because
and you're gonna hear a horn.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But just as an example, one of the, and I'm not hating on Robinson aircraft. Don't get me. Don't say
why
that.
Did you even?
Because they're gonna bring it up.
Oh my
God. And it's
God.
fine. It's not a thing that we can't talk about. It's just to say that the mass of the rotor system that is turning up there above you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That has somewhat of a relation on how much time you have to react.
Okay, so can I
going to slow down?
Can I put that in layman's terms? If I threw a softball at Corey, right, it would go so far before it would fall out of the sky with one amount of force. If I threw a regular baseball at Corey, it might go a little farther and a little longer. Huh? Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, you know what I'm saying? But the relationship there is we're talking about mass versus inertia and how long something will travel. And then the helicopter industry, Robinson's, there's part of this discussion. So go on, continue. Again, I just want to give him a layman's term
discussion,
observation.
I'm not going to go Robinson bashing because it's not that. It's not
nothing
helicopter. About that. It's about the fact that it's a small aircraft,
mm-hmm.
and all of its components weigh less mass, and thus less inertia, less momentum when they are in motion. And thus, when they lose the engine, any helicopter, but helicopter loses the engine, single engine, the blades begin to slow down.
Yeah.
So we have to, as pilots, we have to react. And we were talking about memory items for this airplane accident, airplane incident, as it would be. They had some memory items that they had to do immediately, but then they had some time to review the rest of the checklist. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about with the helicopters is if you have an engine failure, a complete engine failure in a helicopter, single engine, you literally have to do something, and I'm not kidding, within like a second to 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Like you have to do it that quickly.
Well, no, here's what you have to do.
Depending on what it is.
All right, here I'll tell you what it is. Basically, and I'll give you a small analogy, right? This piece of paper, if I let it go, it floats, okay? This is a helicopter, okay? For comparison. Okay? It doesn't float. Okay.
The dog.
I'm sorry, I woke up the dog. Unless you actually, there's a device inside that controls the pitch of the blades called the collective. What you need to do is you actually have to set a proper attitude with the cyclic, which means you pitch the nose, and then you have to raise the collective appropriately. And you have literally within 2 seconds to do this.
Yeah, seconds.
Seconds.
To set it to lower the collective, lower the pitch of the blades so they don't create as much drag.
Right.
So they continue to spin because we don't want them to slow down. And then you can fine tune it with practice. You'll know already, but we can fine tune it where you can have a balance of drag to driving force, because as you're no longer creating as much lift, the aircraft is going to begin to settle because gravity. Hello, gravity, and because you're sinking, right? The air mass of a helicopter is no longer coming from above and being thrust down through the top of from the rotor head from above.
Right.
Now that your aircraft is actually settling down to the surface, the air mass is coming up from the bottom now up through the blades. And there's a lot of aerodynamics, not difficult, but it was a longer conversation than I want to go into.
Mm-hmm.
There's a driving force. The way the air travels around the blades themselves as they rotate in a descent, it's called an auto rotation, and they can drive themselves. So now we have a balance of the auto rotative force and the drag, and thus we can still, in a way, honestly, control the glide of the helicopter down to the ground. So I've had people ask me many times, actually, when we were talking about flying, it's, oh, you fly a helicopter, okay, cool. So what happens if the engine fails? Like, and they just don't know, and that's okay. They have not introduced to that subject at all.
Sure.
And in the same way that an airplane with no engines would still glide, depending on some things, you could still probably glide, like, paper airplane still glides with no engine. A helicopter still can glide to the ground under control, even with. So I guess what our conversation was going into is that there's with anybody helicopter pilots out there, they're just not quite the same type of
emergency. They require different levels of urgency,
or timeliness, let's say.
Yep.
It depends a bit on it, but yeah, complete engine failure is like in reaction time.
Quick question: what exercise was that?
What's that?
What exercise was that? Was that exercise 7? When did we? I just want to see something.
Auto rotation?
Yeah.
Play the audio.
No, I'm not playing the audio. No, I'm not gonna play the audio.
So what he's looking up is the place we both used to work when we were working together at a flight school when I was a chief, and we, along with our previous chief, which is what it is, we filmed some training exercises to actually help the new instructor pilots properly standardize their instruction they provide to the. Yeah, 7.
Oh, there we go.
See,
there you got it.
There
Yeah.
you go. So
okay.
we nailed that. Yeah.
Wait. So
Are you?
I'm gonna play just one little quick thing of just to show people what it's like to see an actual auto rotation.
I'm not showing this on stream.
I might. Oh no, wait.
Rice at this.
It's okay. It's old. The company doesn't even exist anymore. So you know what? We'll come back to it one day.
I don't know who owns those rights, to be honest.
This is true. It's actually, but you know what? It's unimpressive the way that this one's talked through.
But see, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
People think it is, but it shouldn't be. Anyway, we're a little bit off topic there. But what we're getting into there is teaching auto rotations to ab initio helicopter
I'll show
pilots.
a screen capture of this. Yes.
Yeah. So this is one of our. We used to fly the aircraft called a Schweitzer. A single engine, piston driven, 3-bladed helicopter, single engine. And you can see it's got a really great view. That's one thing.
It does.
That's
It was
really cool
fantastic
about
view.
flying these particular aircraft.
They were great.
Is you're in a giant bubble, and we flew with the doors off because there's no air conditioning.
It was hot as hell.
And we saw it in Florida, and in summers, got really hot. And you wore sunscreen. But anyway,
we'll have to delve into that more.
It's a whole other.
That's a whole nother
anyway,
video. But
point being, yeah, emergencies.
Way different.
Getting back to what we talked about today, when no one wants to look out the window on their airliner on the way to Hawaii and see the engine on fire and go, well, guess I'm not going to Hawaii today. Maybe you
amongst other things.
But yeah, amongst other things, you may be thinking to yourself.
It might be a thought.
That might not be the first thing you think to yourself.
Yeah.
That might be the first thing.
That might be the first
if you don't
one.
know. But
That's kind of funny.
I'd be like, bing, bing. Is number 1 on? Just tell me number 1's on.
Oh, you wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'd be like, well, I'd be like, hey, just let me know if the guys need any help. Anyhow, we went over by 10 minutes.
Okay, well,
and
Mars is still going on.
Is it really? Hey, we got the links below, okay, to the Mars lander stuff, and we're gonna take a look at that for a little bit more. And the other part of it is that we've got the second iteration of the Rolex videos almost done.
I'm gonna upload that today, right?
Oh crap! Because I have to finish one last thing. It's gonna be up between today and tomorrow. Okay, the
We're
1080p and
gonna
the
try-
4K.
yeah, we're gonna try to finish it. Mike's gonna try to finish editing.
It's
rendering
done
today,
Yeah.
but it takes it takes a bit of time for YouTube to crunch
Yes.
the 4K videos, which we want you to have it in 4K, so we're gonna do it 4K.
You know what? I'm gonna make an executive decision. This is what we're doing on Wednesday. We're gonna do another premiere on Wednesday.
Okay.
So we got another premiere of the Rolex video coming up on Wednesday.
Well, I can still upload it, and then we can just make it public on Wednesday.
Yeah, and then the other issue that we have is that we're still waiting to do another SpaceX launch. If you're waiting for those,
Oh my,
everyone's
yes.
waiting because as a final
yeah.
update, they currently have suspended all launches just because they did have a failure of what they're finding out on the one that we covered that didn't make it back to the drone ship. Of course, I Still Love You. It landed in the ocean as we were covering it. The birds were startled because apparently they're not all the retrograde engines fired to stop the descent, and that's why it did not make it to the ship. So they're still investigating that, and that's one of the reasons why we don't have an update on the one that we want to cover again, because there's another evening launch coming up, we're
early morning, isn't it?
there's an early morning and an evening. They're both postponed, and we're looking at getting out there to cover another SpaceX launch without issue, but we can't do it unless they're ready to go. So they're currently both on hold.
That would be counterproductive.
That would be weird. So with that said, I'm done. You done?
That's fine. Yeah. I mean, again, thank you for everybody hanging out, and those in chat, EB and James, thanks for hanging out. If anybody had any questions, even after the video is done, you can put them in the comments below. If again, as we normally say, if there's anything you guys want to that we maybe mentioned in passing, or you'd like to hear us kind of revisit, we're gonna be revisiting obviously space, aviation, all kind of the things we've been normally doing too that we're interested in. But if there's something in particular, just let us know. As Mike said as well, thanks for the likes, the follows, the subscriptions. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah, very much.
It lets the more you guys, the more of you that do that, the more we'll be able to maybe plan some other things and go do cover some more stuff. And that makes it more fun for everybody. So much appreciated.
Yeah, and two things that we still have on the list is I'm about to go get current back in a Cessna because I need to do 3 takeoffs and landings. Because I just want to go rent a Cessna. We're looking at going to Sun and Fun, so that's one of the other videos we're looking at. And we're also going to drive a NASCAR.
Yeah.
The not too distant future. It's still another 2 months away, but that's another thing that's in the work for you guys too. So we're going to take on that experience. So with that said, hey folks, for me, thanks again for the support. We appreciate it. The channel's growing exponentially, and we couldn't be happier with that. And we're going to chop up this video a little bit and leave that one for us diagnosing the 777 incident out there for everybody to see, because it's worth the investigation. So, hey, thanks for your time. We appreciate your time with us today, and we'll talk to you guys real soon.
Thanks so much.
Peace. See ya.
See you next time.
Bye-bye. This is your flight attendant. We'd like to thank you for flying with us.
The shortest flight ever.
Yeah, right? No, I've had shorter.
Please remain in your seat. Seatbelts fastened.